We're back with my favorite cold open of the season, the Top of the Pops. Eric always gives it to me, and I'm extremely appreciative always. Well, until we get into like the 1940s, and then I'm like, wait, what are these songs that I've never heard of? But now I'm kind of like in my like pre-yacht rock stuff my mom used to listen to era, so we're good. The number 3 song of 1973 is Killing Me Softly with His Song by one Roberta Flack. And I love this song. I will always love this song. It's timeless, honestly.
Yes, it is.
George Michael does a good version of it. Not as good as Roberta, but I think we have Lauryn Hill to thank for making sure that everybody of the next generation knows exactly what we're talking about when we talk about the song.
I agree. I love Lauryn Hill. I wish that fame hadn't overwhelmed her so much, because the miseducation of Lauryn Hill is like no skips from top to bottom. All right, number 2, taking it in a different direction. Jim Croce? I should know that because I listen to all of his songs, but Bad Bad Leroy Brown was number 2. So
I had to listen to that one before we started because I wasn't sure. I think I had heard it before, but I didn't recognize the name and the artist, and I was like, what's that? I had to go listen to that one.
I didn't know the artist, but I remember that song. I love that song. It's the baddest man in the whole damn town.
Yeah, it's fun. Now I want to know if like anybody named their kid Leroy, after listening to the song in 1973. Their last name was Brown. They were like, oh, I'm inspired. And then number 1, taking it in an entirely different direction, in a sort of I'm proud to be an American direction. Number 1 is Tie a Yellow Ribbon Around the Old Oak Tree by Tony Orlando and Dawn. Dawn does not get a last name. Dawn is like Cher. Dawn is like Madonna.
No, Dawn is a duo. Dawn was these 2 women. I don't think either one of them were actually named Dawn. I think it's like Tony Orlando and Sunrise, basically. It's like his backup singers.
Sunrise. Okay, is it me or like, is that just so out of place? Like, you've got these other 2 fairly more modern songs, and then this one that's like a throwback from the 40s? Like, what is up with that? Like, I don't know. I don't know. It
Tie a Yellow Ribbon sounds incredibly 70s to me.
I feel like we're doing some kind of kid song where London Bridge is falling down. I just
kind of.
And that's a cool version with
Justice for Fergie's London Bridge. Which I might say is maybe even a better song than London Bridge is falling down.
I don't know. I kind of wish these 3 were reversed. I think Roberta should have been on top, but these are Billboard 100, kind of a thing. It's you can't change the taste of people in 1973.
No, and in 50 years the patriotism always wins out. You know that. So
if you did it today, it would be reversed. It definitely would be reversed. I don't think number 1 would even be on that list.
Tie a Yellow Ribbon Around the Old Oak Tree is such a sappy, saccharine song that would never be a pop song today.
Yeah,
Roberta could still kill it though,
for sure.
She would be number 1. Absolutely,
she's number 1 in our hearts.
Welcome to the Rewind Project, where Allie, Matt, and Eric take another look at your favorite milestone movies through the lens of our present day. Will it be a skip, rent, or buy? Stay tuned and find out.
Okay, everyone, welcome back. We are continuing our conversations on the films of 1973 that are celebrating their golden anniversary. This is the Rewind Project. I am Eric.
I'm Allie.
I'm Matt.
And today we are talking about Robert Redford and Barbra Streisand in The Way We Were, directed by one Sidney Pollack, who I know as an actor as much as I know as a director. Not a bad actor either. Written by Arthur Lawrence and many, many others. Lots of uncredited screenwriters worked on this one, including some folks you may have heard of: Francis Ford Coppola, Patty Chayefsky, Herb Gardner, David Raphael, Alvin Sargent, and Dalton Trumbo, who interestingly was one of the Hollywood 10. And this movie gets into the Hollywood 10 a lot. 10 people who were the first to be blacklisted for being communist sympathizers. in Hollywood. And apparently they called him up and maybe he just did a little fact checking or, a little like, this is kind of how it went down. But he contributed to this as well as many other behind the scenes. But Arthur Lawrence is the one that got the screen credit.
I mean, that's a name. Dalton Trumbo. Like, you have to be like a great American novelist to have a name like that. Was he a novelist too? I
don't know. He was a very, very talented, twice Oscar-winning screenwriter. And there was a movie called Trumbo. And I want to say Bryan Cranston played him. And it's the whole...
That sounds right.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
The whole story of his blacklisting. So if you're a Bryan Cranston fan,
Bryan Cranston and Diane Lane.
Yeah, it's I've not seen it, but it's on my list. It's on my forever. I will watch this someday on a rainy day list of movies, and maybe this is what will finally get me to do it. Who knows?
He wrote Reuben Holiday, Dalton Trumbo.
Yes, and he also got an Oscar in the 50s under a pseudonym.
Oh.
And it wasn't until years later that they admitted it was Dalton Trumbo because he was blacklisted and no studio could hire him. So he took another name and wrote a screenplay in secret and won an Oscar.
That's some badass behavior, honestly.
And then years later, and then they finally brought him up to the stage like in the right before he died in the 70s to actually hand him an Oscar. Some notable achievements for this film. 2 Oscars, both musical Oscars for Best Song and Best Score. The song is a classic, and as longtime listeners will know, it used to be our theme music for the Rewind Project. And Marvin Hamlish also won an Oscar for Best Score, which didn't overuse this song. I was really happy about that because a lot of movies from the 70s, like you hear... they have a theme song and you just hear it over and over and over again. And it just gets so annoying.
I agree. I mean, I love this song. And I'm so mad for not clicking, but when I was doing my little tiny bit of research, quote unquote, there was something that said that this was the number 2, best use of score in a movie, of the same kind of, song over and over again, but I didn't click. So I don't know what number 1 is. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, we want to, if it's Love Story, then that list is garbage because true. that made us all want to vomit. So, and there's another one, no one's ever seen this movie, but me, because I'm a weird Liza Minnelli fan. But she did this movie in '69 called The Sterile Cuckoo, and she didn't sing for it, but they used this folky kind of Simon and Garfunkel kind of sappy, slow song, and it played all the time with the vocals. Like every time there was a montage, it's the same song. And they so clearly wanted Come Saturday Morning to be this huge hit, but I wanted to throw my TV against a wall the 5th time I heard it in that movie. It was so bad. Anyway, though, it also got Oscar nominations, Best Actress for La Streisand, Cinematography, Costumes, and Art Direction. I'm not sure if I know who won the Costume Award. I wouldn't have argued with costumes for this one. The period, I think, was nicely rendered without hitting you over the head with anything.
I thought the costumes were great. And as I said in the group chat, I think that Barbra has never looked better in a movie.
She has never looked more gorgeous in a film, ever.
Agreed.
And, I was quite taken with Robert Redford's big chunky white sweater. Chunky white sweater hasn't looked that good since Knives Out, as far as I'm concerned.
That is a good chunky sweater movie. And just to follow up, the best Oscar for costumes went to another movie we're watching this season, The Sting. So
okay, another period piece and probably a little bit more stylish. But anyway, so fine. This movie also placed on a couple of AFI lists. It is not in the 100 best films of all time, but it was number 6 on their 100 Years, 100 Passions list of
now they're just
greatest
making shit
love
up.
stories on film.
They wanted to put this in a list, so they made a list to put it in.
No, I don't think they did it just for this movie. But I mean, it's Casablanca was number one on that movie. So that's the 100 best love stories on film. And this one was in the top 10. So, okay. And then, of course, number 8 on 100 Years, 100 Songs for iconic songs used in film. So there we are. Here's the plot. This is an ill-fated romance between a left-wing activist and a privileged writer playing out against the backdrop of World War II and McCarthyism. It was kind of a love story with a little bit of politics thrown in there.
I don't know. I know we have a lot to discuss, and perhaps my opinion will change as it does sometimes after we discuss. I had a lot of big feelings about this movie, and I can't decide how I feel about it. Like, I'm very twisted about it.
Agreed.
Well, I want to talk about the movie. That's not a criticism necessarily.
I feel very usually I can come out of a movie and be like, absolutely yes, or absolutely no, or yeah, fine, it was fine for one, $3.99 in 2 hours. But this, I don't know.
Huh. Well, I want to talk about the movie that exists before we get into the movie that could have been. But there are a couple of deleted scenes that you can actually see on YouTube. That, spoiler alert, I think they shouldn't have deleted. I think they make the movie much better. But we'll get into it when we get there. We're going to do what we always do and start off with the cast. And at first I was like, I don't care who got first billing. I'm going to put Barbra Streisand first. Guess what? Streisand got first billing.
Yeah, she fucking did.
Yes, she did. So we're going to talk about Barbra first. Barbra Streisand, and it really is her movie. If you're going to compare arcs, I think she has a much stronger arc to be told. Barbra Streisand, Oscar nominated as Katie Morosky, radical of this little preppy college they went to, and president of the Young Communist League, affectionately known as Katie.
Katie. I love Barbra Streisand. I hated Katie Morosky. She was insufferable. And she was insufferable till the most of the end. And
okay, but you've known those people, though.
Oh, sure. They're not friends of mine because those types of people drive me nuts. But yes, I know exactly who she was and what she was doing. And did I go to American University in the 90s? Yes, absolutely. Did we have those types of people there? 100%. She made me really very secondhand embarrassed for her. I don't know. I had a real tough time with this character.
I don't know that I would be necessarily best friends with Katie Morosky, but I thought that Barbra Streisand did a really good job of showing us, convincing me, I should say, that it comes from a sincere place with her, that she's not doing it because she is it's not virtue signaling. It's not just kind of performative politics points. I mean, she really does have very strong feelings about all of these things and doesn't quite understand apolitical people who don't give a shit. I mean, she really just doesn't understand them as much as we could look at her and say, oh, lighten up, and then the way Robert Redford frequently does in this movie. Kind of looks at her as oh my God, lighten up. She just doesn't have that in her. It's not who she is. So I also thought her moments of insecurity went a long way for me. So when she, went out and bought him this huge spread for dinner, and it looks like he's going out for the evening, and she's just like, but you can't, I would have made pot roast. I make a really good pot roast. You've got to stay. And I was like, she's just wearing her heart on her sleeve. And I thought, okay, this makes up for a little bit of the, hitting the microphone and calling her entire senior class fascists.
I agree with both of you. I mean, she obviously was a little bit obnoxious at times, but she actually believed in what she was saying, and which added that level of sincerity. I don't know that another actress would have pulled this off quite as well. I actually liked Katie. She probably would get annoying, and you would tell her, just chill for a minute. I don't think she got her due from Hubble. Honestly, she was too good for him, and he's a piece of trash. But
trash in the ocean. Hashtag patriarchy. Ooh, the second half of that movie, I was hot to try.
I mean, I'm glad at the end of the movie. Spoiler warning: she doesn't end up with him.
Thank God.
And I'm irritated that she still is in love with him, because you can tell, and she's like, she still wants to be with him. And I understand that, like, loving somebody that's not good for you, and Hubble was not good for her.
No.
But we'll get into that later. But I enjoyed her in this movie. She was what made the movie palatable for me, because I did not like the relationship that they had with each other.
Another thing
pissed me off.
that I thought that they did really nicely is showing, without like hitting you over the head, the fact that Hubble has, is a golden child, does not have to work, and Katie has like 18 jobs in college, and she's got 16 jobs after she graduates, and just the fact that she probably had to work all of those jobs to afford college, to afford that apartment, to, even have any sort of semblance of a lifestyle or social life. I liked how they reminded us that they weren't like, comes from a poor family, I thought that was really nicely done.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And it just, and it was done in a way that, they just placed her. I mean, when they all go out to, eat their cheeseburgers, she's working at the diner, because of course she is, and when he's, sitting there drinking his beer in his lovely chunky white sweater, she's coming from the Lanotype machine, where she just happens to know that Mrs. Simpson married the Duke of Windsor, and, doesn't know what else to talk about. So she mentions it twice, and it's a little awkward, but yeah, I mean, that's they are who they are. And one thing about her, though, that I kind of expected and then I didn't get was, at the beginning of this movie, not only is she very committed to her politics, she also cares a lot about her writing. Mm-hmm. And I think as soon as she discovers that maybe he's a better writer than she is, that just kind of goes away. And I didn't know how I felt about that.
Yeah, because she kind of gives up her entire life. I mean, especially the second half of the movie, where they move to Hollywood, and, she's now hobnobbing with, the studio execs and stuff like that. And which she's still trying to be a protester and everything, but you don't see her in any kind of capacity of working with the rest of Hollywood's community against, McCarthyism ends up being her protest. And that gives her some reason for being there. Otherwise, they reduced her, and there's nothing wrong with this, but they reduced her to a housewife for Hubble in this storyline.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
her job was to be his wife. Yeah.
And that's not what she really looked like she wanted. If that's what you want, I'm all for it. And I'm not saying that that's anything bad, but it seems like that Katie was not the person that's what she really wanted out of life.
Yeah. And there was another scene that they cut, because they cut a bunch of scenes. And I like this one too. There was a scene where he is almost finished with his book, and he just wants to, take a break and go for a movie. And she's like, no, you're 2 pages away from finish. You have to finish. And it really just kind of shows her driving him, because she's got way more ambition than he does. And it's not even her book. But she really does believe in his talent. And I'll tell you, as pretentious writing goes, when you're trying to say, so-and-so is a brilliant writer, I actually thought the little bit of that short story that we heard in English class was actually pretty good. Like I believe that Hubble is a brilliant writer based on that little paragraph. I was like, okay, and deeper than you would think. Of course, he's writing about his own shallowness, so maybe that's why.
Right, what you know.
But at least he's self-aware about how shallow he is. So let's get into it. Robert Redford as, the perfect name for this character, Hubble Gardner. Hubble.
A great American novelist. I mean, that's one of those weird names that you will never forget.
It's true.
Yep.
Trumbo Part 2. I feel that,
that might have been Trumbo's big contribution, is his name has to be weirder. Change it to Hubble.
Hubble. It's funny because there were times where I thought he was hot and times where he didn't, and he definitely looked too old to play a college student. She didn't, but he did. And in those scenes where they're outside, I was like, those are not the wrinkles of a college student. It was a little bit distracting to me. But God, I hated this character. I just want, I didn't know that they got back together. They got married. I I know about the movie, but I didn't know the nuances. And I was hot. I was like, he doesn't love her the way that she loves him. And it's just, I was very embarrassed again, some more. And, she got pregnant and he didn't really seem to care. And then at the end when he didn't even 18 minutes went by before he asked about his fucking daughter, and I didn't even think he was going to ask about it at all. I'm telling you, I just saw that part today, so I'm a little hot to trot. It's very fresh in my mind. But like, what do you even do? Like, do you even pay child support? Oh, I just was not having any of it at the end.
So I suspect that Hubble never loved Katie. I think he enjoyed that she boosted his ego, because I mean, not that he probably didn't get enough of that from other people, but because she loved his writing so much and she was there to just dote on him at all times because she was so madly in love with this man that really didn't deserve her love. I think that's what he really enjoyed. And she was somebody that most of the time would go along with whatever he wanted, unless it interfered with her politics. And so I don't think he ever really loved her. And I think that's really the reason I don't enjoy the story of this movie at all.
It's interesting.
It's a one-sided love affair.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe that's kind of a way that perhaps this movie didn't age very well. Because I think that in 1973, I think most people saw this as like a great love story. But, we're looking at it, through much more feminist lenses. Kind of going like, she's bringing a lot to this relationship and he's just kind of along for the ride.
She's bringing everything to this relationship.
But I think in the lens, trying to look at it the way it might have been seen in 73, I think that he did love the fact that she believed in him so much. I mean, I think that he kind of thought no one else in my life can see in me, the depths that this woman can sense, because they all just think that he's this pretty blonde guy who, fills out a uniform quite nicely. And she's like, you're a brilliant writer. Like, you need to do this. What do you mean there's not going to be a novel? What do you mean there's not going to be a second novel? Like, she really does kind of, not in a naggy, really annoying kind of way, but she won't accept him not, at least trying to live up to his potential. And no one else sees that potential but her.
Okay, but loving her admiration for him is not the same as loving her. And
no,
we don't ever really get.
But I don't think he just loved the fact that she loved him. I think that he felt seen by her in a way that no one else
Matt's face.
did, which I'm not saying is that much better. But you know what I mean? When people know who you really
he
are.
He doesn't feel seen.
Well, okay. But you know how it is when the person that you're kind of into, when they see you for who you really are, that is a level of intimacy that gets achieved there. And I think that he knew who she was too. And to our opening statement, that Allie gave us about how fucking annoying Katie can be. I mean, he kind of accepted her and her quirks as well. I mean, he did try to change her more than she tried to change him, but he tried to change her in some pretty relatable ways because
just general, I don't know, social mores.
Lighten up. Just social skills. Yeah. Just social skills. That's all we're talking about.
Just a little bit. You don't have to like these people, but you don't have to hate them.
Yeah. And even if you hate them, you don't have to tell them you hate them to their faces.
In their house.
I mean, these are real basics here.
Yeah, you don't have to have stank face in somebody else's house. Like, you go, that is what your husband or your partner is for. That is what you do. You gossip about them after you leave in the car ride home.
Yeah. So really the only other performance that I kind of thought was worthy of singling out in this movie, not to say that everyone's bad, it's just that this whole movie is just Redford and Streisand. I mean, that is just the entire thing. And all of the best scenes, I think, are just the two of them alone. But Lois Chiles actually made her film debut, future Bond girl, Lois Chiles, as Carol Ann, who was Robert Redford's college sweetheart, who became his best friend's wife, and then his best friend's ex-wife, and they had a little fling kind of towards the end of the movie. But Carol Ann's there is maybe somebody who, might have had a more successful relationship with Hubble had it gone that way.
Fits in a little bit more to the scene.
She's very Beekman Place.
Yeah. I just thought I was laughing because her little pickup line, "We've got some champagne for, I don't know, Bon Voyage." And I'm like, okay, just invite him over. And there was that whole weird scene where he goes over there, and I thought they were going to bang then, but then he just leaves. Like I don't know if he was just feeling her around, so to speak, or what. But clearly he was not going home to his wife, and then he definitely wasn't going home to his pregnant wife. So
I get the feeling that Carol Ann probably was hiding some psycho like underneath that pretty face, and he probably thought better about because he'd already been with her once, and he's like, I could dabble in that pool again, but I know what lurks beneath the surface, and maybe that's not a good idea.
No, but he definitely goes back. He takes another dip in that pool before the movie's over.
Does he?
Oh yeah. Didn't you think so?
He went to her house and then he left. I didn't know that did he cheat on?
Yes.
Oh, I forgot that
when
part.
She meets him on the stairs and she's like, I've got some champagne for a Bon Voyage.
For a Bon Voyage. I mean, you never see it, but he clearly goes home with her.
See, again, Hubble, kind of trash. Oh, the
I
one moment
got
where
mad at that because that was when Barbra Streisand had already been pregnant. I was like, you fucking asshole.
I forgot about that. Yeah. I mean, the one good moment he had is when he defended her at the protest, and he popped that guy who yelled at the nasty thing at her. That was about his only good moment. And then they have an argument afterwards.
Okay, but that moment was so short-lived, though, because then as soon as they're alone together, he basically is saying, look what you're putting me through, as opposed to having any kind of awakening about how, brave she's being and how awful her political adversaries really are.
See? Hubble is trash.
He's kind of trash.
Trash.
I just didn't realize, again, I thought I knew this movie, or I thought I knew a general sketch of this movie. I didn't realize that they were two people that were kind of mismatched, and I don't know. I don't know why I'm so surprised at what the actual thing is that I saw, but I was.
I mean, I think I would have enjoyed a movie more that was about them being a little bit mismatched, coming together, and actually having a romance and then growing apart because they are really different people. But that's not what this was. I really didn't ever get the idea that Hubble loved her. I never did. I feel like he was just kind of, she's there, she likes me, and she makes me feel good about myself, so I'll stick around.
I mean, look, we've all dated those people, so that we're with because they see us or whatever,
Well, untrue to my word, I feel like I'm talking about what's not in this movie as much as I'm talking about what's in it. But apparently Arthur Lawrence was very upset when one line was cut. You remember when Barbra Streisand looks at him and says, I want us to love each other? He had a line apparently that they just left on the cutting room floor. And he said, that's the problem, is that we do. And to Mr. Lawrence, that was all about, the fact that their Katie's politics was a feature, not a bug, as far as Hubble was concerned. That's actually, there were clues that he did love that about her. But this movie, a lot of the things that Arthur Lawrence wanted to say about the whole political situation and what it's like to be mismatched in that way was cut.
Interesting.
All right, some honorable mentions from the cast, not because their performances were so standout, just because they ended up becoming people that you go, who is that? Oh, I know who that is. Herb Edelman, who you might not know that name, but better known as Stan Zabornak, Dorothy's ex-husband on The Golden Girls.
Stop it!
Oh, yeah. Played Katie's boss in the beginning of the movie. If you looked at him and thought, I know him from somewhere, that's where you know him from.
That's hilarious.
He used to be married to Dorothy. Sally Kirkland, who's in this movie for a hot second, future Oscar nominee Sally Kirkland, played a fellow activist who was, screaming things on the street with a picket sign 1 minute, and then she runs off and, goes back to Hubble. And I think she had 2 lines. Anyway, she's in this movie. So there she is. And if you blink, you miss her. And then in the movie a little bit more, you probably did recognize him, James Woods.
Trash.
Kind of creepy, but he played her communist friend from college who was kind of her, pal who was working the drink station with her at the senior prom.
He fully loved Katie.
Yes.
He was fully into Katie.
Yeah.
Yes. And I have a story about that when we get to talking a little bit later. So that's it for the cast. I mean, it's a pretty quick conversation for us because usually we have these like enormous cast lists that we run through. But really, this movie is just
it's the two of them.
It's two people, and that's it. Which is maybe good for a romance, I guess. So this is one of those things where the romance doesn't work out, though. I mean, it's billed as a romance. It's number 6 on Hollywood's greatest love stories of all time, and yet there's no happy ending for these two. Was it just politics? I mean, do you think that was what came between them mostly, or was it more?
I think that's what made her undesirable to Hubble, but I don't think that's what came between them. I think the fact that Hubble really just didn't love her, really wasn't into her, was what ended the relationship.
I think that the politics didn't help, and I think that he was used to the type of woman who wouldn't have been so bold and so brash and so open about kind of her values and her feelings. But I think, yes, like they're just two different people. And you like to think that, opposites attract or whatever, but you have to have some common ground. And really, honestly, what was their common ground except they both loved Hubble?
Yes, exactly. And yet that wasn't enough.
Well, and the thing is that they weren't really politically opposed. She had very strong political views, and he kind of didn't care. I think that if you were to ask him, do you agree with her politics, he'd say, sure.
But that was even worse to her. Like somebody like that who has apathy, I think that if he was diametrically opposed in the opposite politics, but was strong in his beliefs, she would have been okay with that. It was because he was sort of like...
I don't think she could have lived with that. She couldn't have lived with a right-winger. Well, there's no way in hell.
Maybe she would have admired him.
But she would have respected that person probably more than somebody who had no opinions whatsoever.
Well, I mean, it's just like the people who decided just like not to vote in 2016. You're just as bad. Sorry. Like the people who... I think so, personally.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of my question about life that this movie kind of prompted for me is that, can a relationship survive political differences? Speaking as a singleton, I haven't been in a relationship for some time, but, I would say right now... No. Like, in 2023, I could not... you better vote the same way that I do. You might like somebody different in the Democratic primary than I do, and we can have fun little debates about that over dinner, but... you'd better not be voting for Trump or DeSantis or sitting out an election in 2024 if you want to be with me. No.
I agree. Though it's interesting, my mom is a Democrat and my dad is a Republican. He did not vote for Trump. I feel like I need to get that out there. He actually voted for Biden last year, which I don't think he's ever voted for a Democrat in his life. But they got married in 1975, so not so far long after this movie. And that wasn't a big deal. It was the same for my aunt and my uncle, different political views, but they could come together on the social stuff. Like my dad said, is, socially liberal and fiscally conservative. And he's that kind of Republican. But I agree with you. I am also single. And in 2023, if you come to me and you do not vote on the blue party line, I'm sorry. It's not going to work. And it just, and I think that it would have even worked maybe 10, 15 years ago if I had met somebody who had the same sort of, believed in abortion, believed in LGBTQ plus rights, that sort of thing, but voted a different way. I think that would be okay. But yes, in current climate, absolutely not.
It's weird that you say that, though, because, I mean, it's hard. I think it's hard to find a moderate common ground between the two parties now.
For sure.
And that's part of this problem, is that I think even people that would consider themselves moderate that would actually, like your dad, think, oh, you know what, well, I will vote this way because this makes more sense for me, even though I'm not actually a member of that party. You don't see that anymore because I think there is this tribalism that is forcing people that either you vote our way or you're just not, you don't belong. And now we just can separate and we just start yelling at the people on our side who aren't completely on our side, and there's no room for free thought amongst either of the parties, because either you're with us or you're against us, and you're with us full steam or you're not. I mean, even one thing that you actually don't agree with us on, well, then you're dead to us. As I kind of feel like politics are going that way.
I hear what you're saying, Matt, but I think my point was, it's not, do I have the ability to engage with someone who thinks differently than I do? Could I live with someone and be in a intimate relationship with them if they didn't stand up for my, first of all, I would hopefully that I would be in a relationship with another gay man. Anybody who wouldn't vote blue as a gay person in 2023, I'm sorry, I have no respect for you. And I can't, I could talk to somebody like that. I could engage with somebody like that and have a civilized dialogue, but I could not live with you and plan a future with you. No. Maybe that makes me intolerant, but it's who I am. I mean, it's just,
and that is, you're right. And so, but I'm just saying, I feel like there's less and less common ground for people to have. And
but there's less and less common ground, period. I mean, I think we are living in a world where getting the vaccine should not have been a political issue. And I will say to you, Republicans made it a political issue. They decided that the Democrats were going to support a vaccine, and they all kind of said, oh, if they like it, then we hate it. And the reason COVID is going to be with us for the rest of our fucking lives is because one political party politicized something that should not have been political.
I won't disagree that a lot of Republicans actually did, and they made it a problem, and it was mostly Republican driven. What I'm saying is, I'm not going to judge every single one of them, even though the majority. I might find somebody who's not an elected official that is still Republican because they might have a local Republican official that actually makes sense for them. I mean, I think you're proving my point right here that there's just no tolerance or common ground. So
again, there's a difference to me between a
that.
friend and somebody that I might admire and someone that I'm going to live with and spend the rest of my life with. Hopefully.
That's
choice.
Just,
I don't think that I could, because I just couldn't handle the headache. I get so upset, when I look at our political situation now and some of the crazy things that this culture war is bringing to us. If I had to deal with that at home, I think it would drive me crazy. I would much rather be single.
It's a hard time to be single, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and it's we are in politically very dicey times as well. It is very polarized, and so it does kind of lead to some of these things. Getting back to the movie, this was supposed to be a much more political film, actually. The script that Streisand and Robert Redford read, the one that Arthur Lawrence wrote, was much more political. But Sidney Pollack cut a bunch of stuff, and including two key scenes that he really did to keep the focus more on the love story. But in doing so, he changed the movie. And one of them, and I saw them both, they were part of the original cut, so they were filmed and edited and scored and put together and then just cut from the movie. One of them, Katie, is driving through UCLA and she stops her car because she hears a young girl basically speechifying the way she used to on a college campus, talking about how awful McCarthy is. And a bunch of other students who are kind of like, ugh, who does she think she is? But she just kind of sees the girl that she used to be and kind of doesn't recognize herself in that anymore. And kind of, the very masterful Streisand, one single tear kind of threatening to fall from the left eyeball kind of action happens. And, and there's that.
I would have liked to have seen... I think that would have made a lot of sense because, as you said, Matt, like she sort of just was like, okay, well, this is who I am now. And it would have been like a nice callback to be like, well, you don't have to be.
Yeah, and she does realize, I think the character that Barbra Streisand was playing does realize how much she has sacrificed of herself to follow this guy around, right? But the other one was a scene where Hubble tells Katie that her friend who loved her so much in college has named names, and one of the names is hers.
Oh,
that would have been a good ass scene.
It was a really good scene, and basically what it means is that if she stays with him, if they don't break up, his Hollywood career is over. Her only other recourse is to name names, which she refuses to do.
Of course.
So, and also she kind of wakes up and realizes this man does not want to live in France and write the next great American novel. He wants to stay in Hollywood and write a bunch of screenplays and end up in television by the time, this whole thing is over. And that it's just, that all the things that she wants and she's trying to kind of force are not going to happen, first of all. And secondly, she will destroy his career if she stays in the picture, because that's what McCarthyism was. Even though she was not working in Hollywood, as somebody with a quote unquote subversive wife, he would be blacklisted and he would not be able to continue working unless she capitulated to McCarthy's committee and named names.
I would have liked that movie a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
I would too.
More tension.
It gave but there was an interview with Barbra Streisand. It must have been like from the DVD or something. I just saw it on YouTube. But right after they showed that scene, she said the way the movie is cut right now, she basically leaves because he cheated on her with Carol Ann.
Yeah.
Whereas this was really her decision to leave because she had a choice. She could name names, or she could stay and not name names and ruin his career, or she could divorce him. And so when she says, will you at least stay with me until the baby comes, it really was kind of her taking ownership of her life and just kind of saying, you know what? And this doesn't work for a whole lot of other reasons anyway, because you don't want to leave Hollywood and I really want you to leave. And this is tearing you up, and so I'm out. And it actually gave them a reason for splitting up, a better reason than the one that we're left with.
Well, and that's very true to her character, because that would have been yet another sacrifice that she was willing to make for him, which is like to not have him be blacklisted. She's going to take the L and, move back to New York, which I'm sure she was happy about anyway, because she didn't want to move to California in the first place. But that would have been a nice dovetailing scene. And it sounds like it would have been like right on par for the way that she kind of conducted herself the whole movie.
Yeah. And then when you see her at the end with her, bam the bomb, and yelling on the street about yet another political cause, it would have been like, oh, she's become that girl at UCLA again.
Right.
Like now she gets to be, her total self.
She's back, baby.
Yeah. And she's doing her thing. I agree. Barbra Streisand agrees. Robert Redford agrees. Arthur Lawrence agrees. The only person who didn't agree was Sidney Pollack, but he was the director and he got the final cut. So there we go. And this is the movie that we're left with. I think it would have been a better movie.
Yes.
Had they maybe had the guts to be a little, and I don't think it would have sacrificed the love story. That was the thing, is that Sidney Pollack kind of thought, let's just keep the focus on the romance. It's like, well, the romance has to end for a good reason. And it's still about, the romance. It's just about, this is why it has to end. And it just seems a little bit more, I don't know, adult.
Agree.
Anywho, who's ready for some fun facts?
Always.
Okay. Fun fact number one, Streisand and Redford both admired each other's work a lot. So I don't want to make this sound like they didn't, because they've never said anything but kind things about each other in terms of being actors and each other's talent. But their work styles were so opposite.
I believe that.
She was a super duper duper prepare, rehearse. She wanted to run the lines again and again and again and again and again. And he liked to be more spontaneous. He liked to kind of play with it. He liked to be kind of in the moment with it. And the more he rehearsed, the worse he got. And so Sidney Pollack said it was this real dance of like getting to the point where she was just almost there with rehearsal, and she probably would have been better with a little bit more, but he was starting to lose it in terms of, going downhill because they'd run the scenes too many times. And that's when he would say, okay, stop, we're filming. And he always thought they'd rehearsed too much, and she always thought they hadn't rehearsed enough, and they were both kind of frustrated by the whole thing. But I think he ended up with two really good performances. Whether or not you like these characters very much, I think that both the actors did really good work.
Well, that's also very theater versus movies.
Yes. Yeah.
In theater, you rehearse a lot and over and over and over again, and you run things and you do table work and you do all that stuff. And it's like you run it until you can't run it anymore. And then you run it a little bit more. But, if you're a movie star and you're not, you haven't done a ton of theater, then it's really the opposite is probably how you approach it.
Yeah. But the great thing about the movies is that you can do a bunch of different takes if you've got the film and you've got the budget and you've got the time. And then you can kind of, again, the director pieces together the performance that they like. And a lot of great improv lines have ended up being, classics in films where you don't pull that shit in the theater.
Right.
You don't make up lines in front of a live audience. That's like not something that you do if you ever want to work again. Another fun fact, Redford refused to say the line, "It will be better this time," as they're about to go have conscious sex for the first time, because he didn't want anyone to think that Hubble, or maybe Robert Redford himself, was bad in bed ever.
Give me a fucking break.
Okay, Hubble was just about passed out drunk the first time they quote-unquote had sex, and I'm not even sure they had sex. I think he kind of fell asleep on top of her. I kind of doubt it.
That was another scene that bothered me, by the way. Like that opening scene where he's like passed out and then all of a sudden just rolls on top of her and she's just like, oh yes. And I'm like, really? Like you're happy with this drunk ass person just rolling on top of you?
If she weren't happy with it, she wouldn't have gotten completely undressed and gotten into bed next to him.
You know he had whiskey dick. Like, come on.
Oh my God, yes.
That and I kind of wondered, like in the 21st century,
rubbing against her, it's not.
Would we say that this was almost non-consensual because he was so drunk? I mean, put it this way: if the genders were reversed and a woman was that drunk, and a man took off all of his clothes and got into bed with him, hoping something would happen, somebody would call that rape.
Interesting point.
Not wrong.
So, is it justifiable? I mean, she did just kind of lay there and he, quote unquote, did all the work of moving all the way over to the other side of the bed. But did he even know what he was doing? I mean, he was so drunk. Anyway, something that probably would be pegged as problematic in 2023 for a number of reasons. Arthur Lawrence allegedly based the story on his own romance with bisexual actor Farley Granger.
Oh.
What?
Who we will meet when we talk about Rope in our 1948 season later on this year. Farley Granger was a young man in 1948.
Another good name.
Yep. And Arthur and Farley had quite the torrid affair, and Arthur Lawrence was the ultra-political Jew who was blacklisted at one point, and Granger was the carefree wasp who did not speak up for him or defend him in any way, and actually kind of didn't care about the whole thing, was like, whatever. And based on all of that goings on, of course, he couldn't write a gay love story, so he wrote something for Redford and Streisand instead. But that was the germ of the idea that made this movie happen.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
That is interesting.
A little Hollywood history. Another fun fact. Neither Robert Redford nor Barbra Streisand wanted her to sing. They didn't want her to sing the theme song. They didn't want any part of it. This was going to be a dramatic vehicle for her, and that was it.
Interesting.
But producer Ray Stark, who also produced Funny Girl, was like, you know what? A hit theme song by Barbra Streisand will only help us at the box office, so he found her a song that she fell in love with and couldn't quite say no to. And the rest is history.
And is now one of her signature songs.
It is. She sang it at the Oscar in Memoriam section a couple years back. Yeah. Remember that? Mm-hmm. When they were going through all the people who had died the previous year, and there was Barbra on stage singing The Way We Were. Before Robert Redford said yes to this movie, because he originally did not want to do it, I think mostly because maybe he didn't want to be the guy in a romance that was ostensibly more about the female character than it was about him. Both Ryan O'Neal and Warren Beatty at some point were in the running for Hubble.
I think both good choices.
Yeah, they could have done it. Yeah. I mean, it just in terms of looks, they look great.
Both maybe a little bit more caddish than Robert Redford, but yes, for sure could fit that waspy type role.
Absolutely. Okay, it is time for a game. Today's game is called The Way We Weren't. And here's the premise that we're working off of. Somebody out there wrote a screenplay about the making of The Way We Were, featuring characters called Barbra Streisand and Robert Redford and Arthur Lawrence and Sidney Pollack. And it's all about a screenwriter who wants to write about politics, a director who wants to downplay the politics, and two actors, one of whom had a huge unrequited crush on the other. Dun, dun, because dun. I don't know whether you knew this or not, but Streisand was crushing on Redford the entire time they were making this movie. And Redford didn't encourage her, but also maybe thought it would make for a better movie, so also did not necessarily dissuade her from falling big and hard for Robert Redford. So Barbra Streisand has found out about this screenplay and has threatened to sue all parties involved because she really just kind of like, she's 70. She's like, this is embarrassing. So no movie about the making of The Way We Were will be made. So instead, what we're doing is we're changing all the names to protect both the Crushers and the Crushies, and we're making a movie inspired by a true story instead of based on a true story. And we're just going to make this a very, very, barely there kind of, everyone's going to know what it's really about, but we can change the time period, we can change the genders, we can change anything else you want. But what we're going to do is we're going to cast this inspired by the true story of the making of The Way We Were. I need actors to play the director, the writer, and the two actors, and anything that you feel like you need to change in order to prevent a lawsuit from the estate of Barbra Streisand, let me know. Matt, we're going to go ahead and start with you.
Okay. So as I was trying to come up with this, my casting started with actually the casting of the actors. And I'm going to take a cue from James Gunn, who just announced who his new Superman is going to be. So his Superman is going to be Darren Sweet. Okay,
sure.
You have if you saw Hollywood on Netflix, you saw him. He was the straight guy that was the gigolo. Actually, really great actor. I actually think is going to make a really great Superman. I think he fits the waspy role for this, and so he's going to play
Which
that.
is ironic because I just saw an article saying that he is the first Jewish Superman.
Is he really?
Yes.
That's
we
awesome.
Love to see it.
Okay.
We love to see it. The members of the tribe will be there. Opening night.
Okay. Even better. I really loved him in Hollywood. I thought he was great. And so since I was already looking at the cast, that actually was a great cast. So I pulled out Dylan McDermott to be my director, and Laura Harrier, who was one of the female leads in that show. She's going to be my writer. And then Lady Gaga is actually going to play Katie. But I am also going to cast JJ, because what I'm going to do with the story is that the love affair is not going to be between our leading lady and Darren and our leading man, but it's going to be between the best friend and the leading man. And that's how we're going to get away with this story. So the JJ is going to be played by Ben Platt, who has also worked with Darren Cornsweet in another Netflix series, Politician. So they were in that together. So that's how I'm going to change the story a little bit. It's still going to be, because the story is not actually going to be about the love affair inside the real movie.
No, it's going to be about people making a movie and somebody crushing on somebody else while they're making the movie, but the other person not crushing in return.
So Lady Gaga's character will have feelings, but the real love story that'll end up happening is going to be the secret love affair between the guy that plays the best friend, who's JJ, and the guy that plays Hubble. That's how I'm going to change up the story.
Okay,
that'd be fun, and she can't sue over that.
So
it's not about her.
Thruple vibes.
It's thruple vibes. Hey, we could even do that too.
Okay, Allie.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I went in a different direction. Shocker. So I really wanted to set this in another time period. And as I had noted on the group chat, none of the movies we have watched have been actually set in 1973 or the 1970s. So this movie that we've watched so far, including the one that we're going to talk about next. So I thought that was interesting that they're all like quote unquote period pieces. So I'm going to set this in the 1970s properly, during the time of the ERA ratification. That is how you say that word. Set the time of the ERA ratification. My girl, J Law, who's having a renaissance again, I love her. She is going to be playing a sort of Gloria Steinem-esque character. So we're going to try to not get sued by a lot of people in this movie. And then my other girl, Issa Rae, is going to be playing someone loosely based on Shirley Chisholm. And J Law is going to fall madly in love with Issa Rae. But it is not going to be returned. I really wanted to keep this all female that was important to me because we are talking about the Equal Rights Amendment. So my screenwriter, who is also a screenwriter in real life, is going to be Phoebe Waller-Bridge, because I feel like she has that sort of ability to get the best out of two characters. I think that Fleabag is brilliant. I will hear nothing otherwise. And I think she's fucking hilarious. And then making her quote unquote directorial debut is going to be Kirsten Dunst as the director of this movie. Even though she's not really technically making a directorial debut, I feel like
awesome.
This would be the kind of project that I think would be interested in. And perhaps, she and Sofia Coppola are besties. So perhaps Sofia taught her a few tricks. So
sure. Well, you know what? She probably would base her character quite a bit on Sophia and all of her work together. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Fun. Okay. So I went for a little bit more gender balance. I wanted 2 men and 2 women in my movie. So in my version, the screenwriter is going to be played by Allison Janney, just because no one plays smart as well as Allison Janney, I don't think. So I really wanted the screenwriter to be a smart person who thinks a lot.
Yeah.
And she's just really good at being a thinking person. The director, just because everyone was so annoyed with Sidney Pollack, even though I think Sidney Pollack is quite charming, I wanted somebody who could play someone who is endearing, but also legitimately annoying. And so I went with Jason Bateman.
Oh, yeah.
Because sometimes he can play those characters who just are a little bit too into themselves.
I mean...
and just, their decision is the right decision, even though everyone around them is going, no!
I've heard he's kind of like that in real life, too. So that's...
If you've ever listened to the podcast that he does... Yeah. What is it?
Smartless, yeah.
Smartless, yeah. The three of them are hilarious together, but he definitely is the character he plays in.
Yeah.
Okay, well, they're good. That's even better casting.
Yep.
My actor is going to be Matthew Rhys, who I just think is so good looking and so good in everything that he does. If you haven't seen the new HBO Perry Mason, both seasons are fantastic. And I think a third one is on the way. I think it got greenlit. So...
no, I think I got canceled, actually. I was going to ask you how you were feeling about that.
Oh, did it?
I think so,
That's too bad. Yeah. I mean, listen, if the audience wasn't there, then the audience wasn't there. But the 2 seasons that were on, I thought were both outstanding. So I highly recommend it. And then for my actress, I just saw a movie last night in the theater called Past Lives. And it starred a woman named Greta Lee. And before the movie, because, the Alamo, if you've been to an Alamo Cinema Draft House, they do this whole pre-show that is completely designed for the movie that you're going to see. And they showed this whole film reel of all of Greta Lee's greatest hits on TV. And Greta Lee has been hilarious in Russian Doll on Netflix, Broad City, and What We Do in the Shadows. And they showed clips from all 3 of those shows, and she was a riot. And then... they showed this movie that was this very kind of thoughtful, like The Way We Were, kind of an ill-fated romance between 2 people, and they're just too different, and it's not going to work out. But she was so good in that, and I was like, oh, wow, she can really do it all. So I'm a big fan of hers now, and I'm going to start following if she's in a new thing, I will watch it just to see her, because she's fantastic. So Greta Lee is going to be my actress in our very kind of, thickly disguised expose about the making of The Way We Were, not really The Way We Weren't. So we're going to wrap up this episode of the Rewind Project with how we always do, with our skip, rent, or buy. Allie, I'm curious if you have come to any conclusions about this movie after having a conversation about it.
Well, I mean, I'm angry because I think it could have been a better movie with those deleted scenes, and I would have felt probably not as conflicted. I guess I'm a reluctant rent. It's kind of how I'm calling myself. I love Barbra. I was glad I saw this. I love the song, and obviously everybody talks about this. Not everybody, but a lot of people talk about this movie, and honestly, it was just a good way to just realize that the patriarchy sucks still some more. 50 years ago too, never stops sucking. So yeah, I would say reluctant rent.
Matt?
That's hard. It really is hard. I mean, the acting was good. The direction was good. The story is just garbage. I mean, I really just did not enjoy the story. I'm going to say skip. It kind of makes me angry the more I think about it. So it doesn't improve my life seeing this movie. I would not watch it again. The actors were great. The story's I just didn't like it. So I'm going to say skip.
Yeah, I was probably a little bit more into this movie at the beginning of this conversation than I am now. But Matt, I have to say, I think you're right. I mean, I think the biggest flaw of this entire thing is that Hubble just never, I don't know, I wouldn't say that he never loved her, but he did not love her with the passion and fervor that she had for him. And that was really what was imbalanced. And so, we can say that politics got between them. And I agree with you, Allie, it would have been a much stronger movie had they left some of those scenes in, that the screenwriter and both actors really wanted to keep in the movie because it was really important to them and the characters they were playing, so it's downgraded a little because of that. I'm a rent. I mean, I'm glad that I saw it. Barbra has never been more luminous on screen ever than in this movie. So if you're a Barbra Streisand fan, I would say, it's a must see. Am I going to buy it? No. Do I need to see it again anytime soon? I do not. Robert Redford was hot and Barbra Streisand was lovely. And, but it's about a romance that doesn't work out, and it's not really all that tragic that it doesn't work out. It kind of just gets to the end that it's going to get to.
It doesn't work out.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like if a romance doesn't work out and you can still call it a happy ending because, Barbara's still kicking ass and taking names in New York City at the end of this movie. And what does she say to him? Your girl is lovely, Hubble.
Your girl is lovely, Hubble. Which Carrie says to Big in Sex and the City, and now I know the reference. So
yes, I was about to say Barbara said it first, but yes, absolutely.
Now I know the reference, so I'll go.
There you go. So next week we are going to be watching a lovely little parable of the future called Soylent Green. Spoiler alert, it's not plankton. But I will give you a week to watch Soylent Green. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, then you need to get out more. But this movie was spoiled for me years ago. But we watched it anyway, and we are going to talk about it right here next week. Until then, take care, everyone. This is The Rewind Project. I am Eric.
I'm Allie.
I'm Matt.
Be kind. Rewind.
You've been listening to The Rewind Project. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, and Google Play. Please subscribe and rate us. It helps a lot. We love your comments and questions. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and via our new phone number at 202-618-2402. Thanks for listening. Be kind. Rewind.
I just hit my head on the microphone. Ow.